Next, Chris Fitzgerald.
I'll be reading a piece I wrote concerning an event which happened on about 11:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on October 25th, 1986. But first, I want to discuss why I write poetry. I write poetry because I have found it gives my life order and structure.
You're a fucking asshole.
I have a release for the images and ideas that seem to impose themselves on my consciousness. I write them down on paper and try to exhaust them to my capabilities. Then they don't keep occurring in my consciousness. James Joyce wrote, "Art has a cause, no purpose, namely necessity, an imperative inward necessity for the imagination to recreate from life its own ordered synthesis. So I'll deal with the images in an honest manner, and they don't haunt me anymore. But just like life, the next day or the next week or the next month, something new seems to impose itself on my consciousness and requires a dealing with. So I'm glad I have this form. This tradition, 1,000 years old, before I was born it was here, after I'm dead it'll be here. I choose the poetic tradition as opposed to the direct forwardness of the prose tradition, which is also a form of literary communication, because I like meter, which is awareness of the rhythm of words, agreeable sounds, and the allowance of poetic license, which means I can exaggerate what I see of it. And now something that has been imposing itself on me since about 11:15 p.m. October 25th, 1986.
Could you be more specific?
We are in Shea Stadium, New York, New York. The city's so nice they had to name it twice. Calvin Schiraldi of the Boston Red Sox is on the mound of the baseball diamond, and he is facing Gary Carter of the New York Mets. There's 2 outs, nobody on. The Red Sox are leading 5-3. They're also leading the World Series 3-2. The Red Sox team has been in this situation before. 1946, they were up 3-2 against the St. Louis Cardinals and lost it in 7. In 1918, they were up 3-2 against the Cubs and won it in 6. And in 1912 against the Giants, 3-2 and won it in 8. There was no night baseball at the time, and so one of them games ended in a tie. I went to the Colonial Theater last week and seen Christopher Plummer and Glenda Jackson, Macbeth. Macbeth is a play that's almost 400 years old. Although there were new actors on the stage with their different mannerisms and nuances, it is still the same play that William Shakespeare wrote. So I hope you can see the similarities with the Red Sox team being the same team as the 1912 team, with the same object as that 1912 team had, which is having more runs scored in the last game of the baseball season than their opponent. Schiraldi is sweating like he has 10,000 pounds of pressure on him. But I am more familiar with the history of the Red Sox than that kid from Texas. He doesn't have 10,000 pounds of pressure on him. He has 1,000,000 tons of pressure on him.
I think the connection is that
the first thing causing the pressure is, of course, January 9th, 1920, when Jacob Ruppert, owner of the Yankees, announced to a group of New York reporters that he had purchased from the Red Sox the services of one George Herman Babe Ruth. Up until that time, the Red Sox had been in 5 World Series and had won all 5. The Yankees hadn't won any. Since that time, the Red Sox had not won another World Series. The Yankees had won 22. Since that time, the Red Sox have been in 3 World Series and lost each in 7 series. 46, 67, 75. I'm watching the game in the living room of my mother's house. I had moved out of my apartment a month ago and I was going to Europe. But in anticipation of what Yogi Berra has called the World Seriousness, I delayed my departure until the day after the World Series. I did leave out of the series. So I'm sitting in the living room of my mother's house. It's me and my mother watching the sweat on Schiraldi. My mother. People in my society sometimes blame their parents for not giving them enough attention or treating the other members of their family in a more equitable manner. I don't have any of those excuses. What I did have is that my mother had been born in 1918, and the Red Sox had last won a World Series in 1918. That's what I always admire my mother for. Mere coincidence didn't seem to satisfy as an answer. The second big reason which had caused all the pressure on Schiraldi, and it happened in my lifetime, was the failure of the Red Sox to send the contract out on time to a man called Carlton Fisk. Fisk, and thus losing the services of the best Red Sox player I had ever seen. Fisk, maybe because he was from New Hampshire, enjoyed being a Red Sox and played as being a Red Sox 100% all the time. That's all one can ever ask from another person. While Schiraldi is sweating, not the manager, not the catcher, not the infielder comes over and says anything to help relax him. I know how one word can change another person's mood. Carlton Fisk would have went out to the mound, and I think it might have went something like this. Calvin, I've been thinking. I'm not really in a champagne drinking mood. Maybe tomorrow, but I feel like drinking a case of Sam Adams tonight with some pizza. Pepper and onion, how's that sound? Well, Pudge, I don't know. Come on, relax. Lighten up, let's go. Let's bring this baby the fuck home. Series over. Bacchus goes and the deluge begins and the Red Sox lose another World Series. But as a poet once wrote, of all the words of mice and men, the saddest sad it might have been. But not to leave on a depressing note, here's a classic quatrain from Alexander Pope. I took the liberty of changing the last two lines. Pope has been dead for 244 years, so what's he gonna do? Haunt me? Get in line, pal.
His literary agency gonna watch out for it.
Hope springs eternal in the human breast. Man never is, but always to be blessed. Red Sox champions on a double dare, without Ruth or Fisk. Well, maybe this year. Thank you.